The great hall of the Dominion was filled with silence. 1,000 alien leaders sat in their curved seats, their hard shell-like bodies clicking softly as they waited. The room was built from black stone taken from conquered worlds. Each stone came from a different planet. Each stone told a story of victory. High Strategist walked to the center of the hall. His body was covered in metal badges that showed his rank. He had led the conquest of more than 200 worlds in his long life. He had never failed. He had never known defeat. To the defeat was not possible. They were too careful, too smart, too patient. Behind him, a large screen came to life. It showed a small blue planet floating in the darkness of space. White clouds moved across its surface. Green and brown land masses could be seen between vast blue oceans. It looked peaceful. It looked weak. "Honored members of the Grand Assembly," spoke, his voice echoing through the hall. "I present to you our next conquest. The humans call it Earth." A soft murmur went through the crowd. They had heard of this world before. The observation had been going on for a very long time. "For 800 of their years we have watched them," continued. "We have studied every part of their civilization. We know their languages, all 7,000 of them. We know their religions, their fears, their weaknesses. We know them better than they know themselves." He pressed a button and the image changed. Now it showed humans fighting each other. Wars from different time periods played across the screen. Swords and spears, guns and bombs, fire and smoke. "They are a violent species," said with satisfaction. "But their violence is turned inward. They fight among themselves constantly. They divide into tribes and nations and attack each other over land, resources, and ideas. They have never united. They cannot unite. It is not in their nature." The assembly members nodded their large heads. This was good information. A divided enemy was an easy enemy. "Their technology is primitive," went on. "They have only recently discovered how to leave their own planet. Their space vessels are slow and weak. They have placed a few satellites in orbit and sent simple robots to nearby planets, nothing more. They have no weapons that can reach beyond their atmosphere. They have no shields, no defense grid. They are completely unprepared for what is coming." Another image appeared. This one showed red dots all over the blue planet. Each dot represented a military base, a government center, or an important city. "We have mapped every target," explained. "Our landing forces will strike these locations in the first wave. We will destroy their ability to communicate within minutes. Their leaders will be captured or killed within hours. Their armies will fall within days. Within one cycle of their moon, Earth will belong to the Dominion." He paused and looked around the hall. Pride filled his chest. This was the moment he had worked toward for decades. The planning was complete. The fleet was ready. Victory was certain. "This will be our 4,127th world," he announced. "Another jewel in the crown of our great empire." The assembly erupted in applause. The sound of their hard bodies clapping together filled the hall like thunder. Stood in the center of it all and felt the pleasure of a hunter who sees his prey. What did not know was that his observation drones were not as hidden as he believed. What did not know was that humans had found the first drone in a place called Roswell, in a country called America, in the year humans called 1947. What did not know was that humans had spent the next 78 years studying that drone and the others that followed, learning their technology, tracing their signals, watching the watchers. What did not know was that humans were very good at keeping secrets when they needed to. Far across the galaxy, on the small blue planet, a woman named Doctor sat in an underground room and watched the same fleet that commanded. Her screens showed the alien ships gathering in formation. Her instruments tracked their movements with perfect accuracy. She was old now. Her hair had turned gray long ago. She had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. She had given up a normal life, a family, children, everything that other humans took for granted. She had done this because she knew what was coming. "They are moving into attack formation," said a man beside her. Colonel was also old, also gray. He had been a young soldier when he first learned the truth about the aliens. Now he commanded forces that officially did not exist. "How long?" asked. 72 hours, maybe less." Nodded slowly. 72 hours. After decades of preparation, it came down to 3 days. "Has there been any change in their communications?" she asked. "No, they still believe we have no idea they exist. They still think we are primitives fighting over patches of dirt." Almost smiled. Almost. She remembered reading the decoded alien communications years ago. They had studied human history in great detail. They had watched every war, every conflict, every act of violence between nations. But they had made a mistake, a terrible mistake. They had seen humanity's wars and thought they understood humans. They thought humans were savage and stupid. They thought the fighting was a sign of weakness. They never considered another possibility. They never considered that humans might be practicing. "Contact all stations," said, her voice calm and steady. "Tell them to begin final preparations, wake up the sentinels." Across the planet, in hidden bases under mountains and deserts and ocean floors, machines began to power up. Weapons that had been built in secret over decades came online. Satellites that looked dead suddenly became very much alive. They had spent 800 years planning their invasion. They had no idea that their targets had spent 78 years planning something much worse. Colonel looked at, "Do you think they have any idea what is about to happen to them?" Watch the alien fleet on her screen, 12,000 ships, the largest invasion force in history, 8 centuries of careful planning, millions of alien soldiers ready for conquest. "No," she said quietly, "they do not, and that is exactly how we want it." In the darkness of space, the fleet began its final approach to Earth. They moved with confidence, with pride, with the absolute certainty of a species that had never lost. They were about to learn that there was a first time for everything. The year was 1947 when everything changed for humanity. A farmer in New Mexico found something strange in his field. It was not a weather balloon like the government told everyone. It was not a secret military test. It was something from very far away. The object was small, about the size of a car. Its surface was covered in materials that no human scientist had ever seen before. Inside, there were no pilots, no crew, just machines, watching machines, recording machines. The kind of machines you send when you want to study something without being seen. Within hours, the object was taken to a secret location. Within days, the best scientists in America were studying it. Within weeks, they understood what it was. A spy drone from another world. The American government did what governments always do when they find something scary. They kept it secret. They told lies. They made anyone who talked about it look crazy. But they also did something smart. They started looking for more. They found more. Over the next 20 years, they found 17 more drones hidden in orbit around Earth. Each one was disguised to look like a natural object. A rock, an asteroid, space garbage, but they were not natural. They were watching, recording, sending information back to someone far away. In 1969, something important happened. The American scientists finally decoded the signals the drones were sending. What they learned changed everything. The signals told a story of an empire called the Dominion, an empire that had conquered thousands of worlds, an empire that was watching Earth and making plans, an empire that intended to add humanity to its collection of conquered species. The Americans realized they could not handle this alone. For the first time in history, they shared their most dangerous secret with their greatest enemies. The meeting took place in a bunker in Switzerland. Representatives from the United States, the Soviet Union, China, the United Kingdom, France, and several other nations sat around a table. They were people who had spent their careers trying to destroy each other. Now they were looking at evidence of something that wanted to destroy them all. "How long do we have?" asked the Soviet representative. The American scientist who presented the information shook his head. "We do not know. Their communications suggest they prefer to watch their targets for many centuries before attacking. They are patient, very patient." "Then we have time," said the Chinese representative. "Time to prepare." And so they prepared. The organization they created had no official name. Those who knew about it simply called it the Quiet Room. Its members came from every nation. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, spies. They worked in secret, hidden from their own governments, their own families, their own friends. On the surface, the world continued as normal. Nations fought each other, governments rose and fell, wars were won and lost. The Cold War came and went, new conflicts took its place. To anyone watching from space, humanity looked exactly as it always had, divided, violent, weak. But underneath the surface, something else was happening. The Quiet Room was building. Doctor joined the Quiet Room in 1989. She was 25 years old, a genius in physics and engineering with a promising career ahead of her. She gave it all up when she learned the truth. "Why me?" she asked the man who recruited her. He was a colonel named young and serious, with eyes that had seen things no one should see. "Because you are brilliant," told her. "Because you have no family ties that would make you vulnerable, because you can keep secrets, and because you want to matter. You want your life to mean something more than papers and prizes." Thought about his words for a long time, then she said yes. For the next 35 years, worked on projects that officially did not exist. She helped design weapons based on the alien technology they had captured. She led teams that built defense platforms on the moon, disguised as abandoned equipment from old missions. She oversaw the creation of satellites that looked dead but were actually very much alive. The hardest part was the lying. Had to pretend to be a normal scientist with a normal life. She published papers. She attended conferences. She smiled and shook hands with people who had no idea that she spent her nights preparing for an alien invasion. Colonel became her closest friend. They never married, never had children. The work was too important. The secret was too big. They gave their lives to something greater than themselves. By the year 2000, the quiet room had grown into something remarkable. Thousands of people worked for it across every continent. They had built weapons hidden on the moon, on Mars, in the asteroid belt. They had created a defense grid that covered the entire solar system. They had learned to read every signal the sent and received. The aliens had no idea. They continued to watch Earth and see what they expected to see. Humans fighting humans, primitive technology, no threat at all. Their drones recorded wars in the Middle East, conflicts in Africa, tensions between nations. They saw exactly what the quiet room wanted them to see. In 2019, decoded a new type of signal. Her hands shook as she read the translation. "They are coming," she told that night. "The final order has been given. They are assembling their invasion fleet." Was an old man now. His hair was white, his body was tired, but his eyes were still sharp. How long? 6 years, maybe 7. They move slowly. They are very careful. Nodded, then we finish our preparations, and we wait. The waiting was the hardest part. Spent those years checking and rechecking every system, making sure every weapon was ready, training the people who would operate them. She barely slept. She barely ate. She knew that everything depended on what happened next. On a cold morning in late 2025, sat in the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. The screens in front of her showed the fleet entering the solar system. 12,000 ships, the largest force humanity had ever faced. Sat beside her. He was 80 years old now. He had spent 55 years of his life preparing for this moment. "They still do not know," he said softly. Watch the alien ships approaching. They moved in perfect formation, confident, proud, certain of victory. "No," she agreed. "They still do not know." She reached for the communication panel. Across the world, hidden in bunkers and bases and secret locations, thousands of people waited for her signal. "All stations," she said, her voice calm despite the pounding of her heart. "The enemy has arrived. Prepare to defend Earth." The thought they were about to conquer a primitive world. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The fleet came out of faster-than-light travel like a fist punching through paper. One moment the space near Earth was empty. The next moment it was filled with 12,000 warships. High strategist stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. Through the massive windows he could see Earth growing larger. The blue planet looked beautiful. It looked peaceful. It looked like an easy target. Around him his officers worked at their stations. They had done this many times before. The conquest of a new world was like a dance they had practiced for centuries. Every step was planned. Every movement was perfect. "All ships have arrived," reported his second-in-command. "The fleet is in attack formation." Clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The formation was called the Sacred Fist. It had been used to conquer hundreds of worlds. The heavy warships formed the center. The carrier ships spread out on the sides. The landing craft hung back, ready to deploy millions of soldiers to the surface. "Begin the first phase," ordered. "Jam their communications, blind their satellites. I want them deaf and blind before they know we are here." The order went out to the fleet. Powerful jamming signals blasted toward Earth. These signals would destroy every radio wave, every television broadcast, every cell phone call. The humans would not be able to talk to each other. They would not be able to coordinate. They would fall into chaos and panic. Jamming signals deployed, the communications officer reported. Then his voice changed. It became confused. High strategist, something is wrong. Turn to look at the officer. Explain. Our jamming signals, they are being reflected back at us. Something is blocking them. That is impossible. The humans have no technology that can. The first shot cut him off. It came from the dark side of Earth's moon. A beam of pure white light shot across the void of space faster than anything had ever seen. It hit the lead dreadnought of the fleet, a ship called the World Crusher that had conquered 50 planets. The World Crusher did not explode. It simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, a massive ship full of 10,000 crew members. The next moment it was gone, crushed into a point smaller than a grain of sand by forces could not understand. For 3 heartbeats, no one on the Eternal Conquest moved. No one spoke, no one breathed. Then the second shot came, and the third, and the fourth. The beams of light came from everywhere. From the moon, from objects floating in space that had looked like dead satellites, from asteroids that had seemed like natural rocks, from platforms hidden in the darkness that no scanner had ever detected. Return fire, screamed. All ships return fire. But there was nothing to fire at. The weapons hitting them came from too far away, moved too fast, struck too hard. The guns were designed to fight other space-faring species. They were designed for battles that lasted hours or days. They were not designed for this. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Watched his fleet die. The mighty dreadnoughts that had terrified 1,000 worlds were swatted from space like insects. The carrier ships tried to scatter, tried to run, but the beams of light followed them and cut them apart. The landing craft full of soldiers never got close to the planet. They were destroyed before they could even begin their descent. Hal whispered, "How is this possible?" His tactical officer was trying to analyze the weapons hitting them. His hands shook as he read the data. "The weapons, they manipulate gravity itself," he reported, his voice trembling. "They create points of infinite density. Our shields mean nothing against them. Our armor means nothing. Nothing can survive a direct hit." Felt something he had never felt before in his long life. Fear, true, deep, terrible fear. "Signal the retreat," he ordered. "All ships fall back, get out of this system." But it was too late. The human weapons were faster than any engine. Ships that tried to run were destroyed before they could build up enough speed to escape. Ships that tried to fight were destroyed before they could lock on to a target. The battle lasted 11 seconds. When it was over, 11,999 ships were gone. Only the Eternal Conquest remained, and only because the humans had chosen not to destroy it. Stood alone on his command deck. Most of his crew was dead, killed when parts of the ship had been carefully targeted. The survivors huddled in corners, too shocked to move. A voice came through the communications system. It spoke in perfect language. "High Strategist, this is Doctor of Earth. Your fleet has been destroyed. Your invasion has failed. You will power down your weapons and surrender your ship. You have 30 seconds to comply. If you do not comply, you will join your fleet." Looked around at the destruction. He looked at the planet below, the planet he had been so sure he would conquer. He looked at the stars where his fleet had been just moments ago. He thought about 800 years of planning. He thought about the certainty of victory. He thought about how sure everyone had been that the humans were primitive and weak. "I comply," he said. His voice sounded strange. It sounded like the voice of someone who had just learned that everything he believed was wrong. Because everything he believed was wrong. The humans had not been primitive. They had been waiting. They had not been weak. They had been preparing. They had not been divided. They had been working together in secret. And they had been ready. As watched, small human ships approached his crippled vessel. They moved with confidence, with purpose, with the calm assurance of a species that had just proved it could defend itself against anything the galaxy could send. The invasion that was planned for centuries had ended in seconds. And the Dominion would never be the same again. The room was white, pure white. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, everything was the same blinding shade of white. There were no windows, no visible doors, no furniture except for 2 chairs that faced each other across a small table. High Strategist sat in one of the chairs. He had been placed there by human soldiers who moved with quiet efficiency. They had not been cruel. They had not been violent. They had simply taken him from his ship and brought him here. The gravity in the room was strange. It pressed down on him just enough to keep him from moving, but not enough to hurt him. The precision of it frightened him more than chains would have. These humans understood physics in ways his own scientists did not. He had been sitting alone for what felt like hours when the door appeared. It simply materialized in the white wall. One moment there was nothing. The next moment there was a rectangular opening. A woman stepped through. She was small by standards. Her hair was the color of metal. Her face was lined with age. She moved slowly but with purpose. She sat down in the chair across from him. For a long moment she just looked at him. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black. They held no anger, no hatred, just a deep, patient understanding. When she spoke, it was in perfect language, not just correct grammar and vocabulary. Perfect accent, perfect rhythm, perfect intonation. "I am Doctor," she said. "Welcome to Earth." Tried to speak. His throat was dry, his mandibles clicked nervously. "How?" he finally managed. "How did you do this? How did you know?" Leaned back in her chair. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from decades of carrying a heavy burden. "We found your first observation drone in 1947, she said. "A farmer discovered it in his field. We took it apart. We studied it. We learned from it. Then we started looking for others." She paused to let this sink in. "We found 17 more drones over the next 20 years. We decoded your communications. We learned about the Dominion. We learned about your empire. We learned about your plans for our world." Felt sick, 78 years. They had known about for 78 years. The observation that was supposed to be secret had been discovered almost immediately. "Why did you not attack us?" he asked. "Why did you wait?" Smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had thought about this question many times. "Because we are not like you," she said. "We do not attack first. We do not conquer. We defend. We survive. We hoped you would change your minds. We hoped you would decide that Earth was not worth the trouble. We gave you every chance to leave us alone." She stood up and walked slowly around the small room. Her footsteps made no sound on the white floor. "Your people watched us for 800 years, she continued. "You saw our wars, our conflicts, our violence. You thought you understood us. You thought we were primitives who could not stop fighting each other long enough to see the real threats in the galaxy." She stopped and looked directly at him. "You were wronged." Said nothing. He had no words. "Yes, we fight each other," said. "We always have. But do you know what we have learned from all that fighting? We have learned how to fight. We have learned how to survive. We have learned that when a real threat appears, we can put aside our differences and work together." She sat back down across from him. "The moment we discovered your drones, our nations stopped being enemies in secret. Americans and Soviets who had nuclear weapons pointed at each other worked together in hidden laboratories. Chinese and Americans who publicly insulted each other privately shared their best scientists. We built weapons you could not imagine. We created defense systems you could not detect. We prepared for this day for almost 80 years. Thought about the Grand Assembly. He thought about the confidence they had felt. He thought about the certainty that Earth would fall just like every other world. "You let us think we were winning," he said quietly. "You let us believe our observation was secret. You played a game with us for almost a century." Nodded. "Yes, we did, because we needed time. Your technology was far ahead of ours. We needed decades to catch up, to surpass you, to build weapons that could destroy your fleet in seconds." She leaned forward. Her eyes were intense. "And we needed to be sure. We needed to know exactly what we were facing. We needed to understand your tactics, your strategies, your weaknesses. We needed to know everything about you before you ever fired a shot." Remembered all the signals they had sent back to the Dominion, all the reports about human weakness, all the analysis of human society. They had been so careful, so thorough, so certain they were the ones in control. "You read all of our communications," he said. "Every single one. For 53 years we have known everything you planned. Every ship in your fleet, every soldier in your army, every strategy your commanders developed. We knew when you would attack. We knew where you would attack. We knew exactly how to destroy you." The room fell silent, felt the weight of this truth pressing down on him harder than the strange gravity. "What happens now?" he asked. Stood up again. She straightened her clothing with the careful movements of someone who had carried herself with dignity for a very long time. Now we send a message to the Dominion, not a threat, not an ultimatum, just a simple statement of facts. You came to conquer us. You failed. Your fleet is gone. Your soldiers are dead. Your high strategist is our prisoner. She walked toward the door that had reappeared in the wall. We will offer peace, real peace, a partnership between equals, but we will also make something very clear. She stopped at the door and looked back at him. We have known the location of your for 53 years. We have had the ability to destroy it for at least 30. We chose not to. We gave you the chance to make a different choice. You made the wrong one. We are giving you another chance now. Do not make us regret it. The door began to close behind her. Just before it disappeared, she spoke one last time. Your empire has spent centuries believing it is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. You need to understand something now. You are not the predator. You never were. You just had not met us yet. The door vanished. The room was white and silent again. Sat alone with his thoughts. He thought about his people. He thought about the thousands of worlds they had conquered. He thought about the millions of species they had enslaved. For the first time in history, they had encountered something they could not defeat. And somehow that something wanted peace. Did not understand humans. He was not sure he ever would, but he knew one thing for certain. The galaxy had changed forever. 6 months had passed since the invasion. 6 months since 12,000 ships had been destroyed in 11 seconds. 6 months since the galaxy learned that humanity was not what it appeared to be. The signing ceremony took place on the moon. The humans had built a great hall there, carved from lunar rock and covered with a dome of transparent material that showed the stars above. Earth hung in the black sky like a blue and white jewel. It was beautiful. It was a reminder of what the humans had fought to protect. Representatives from the Dominion sat on one side of a long table. They looked smaller than they had before the invasion, weaker. The confidence that had defined their species for thousands of years was gone. In its place was something new, respect, maybe even fear. On the other side sat the human delegation, men and women from every nation on Earth. They wore different clothes and spoke different languages, but they moved as one. They had learned to work together in secret. Now they did it openly. High Strategist was there. He had been released from his white room after 2 weeks. The humans had treated him well. They had fed him, given him medical care, answered his questions. They had not tortured him or threatened him. This confused him more than anything else. The document on the table was called the Accords of Terra. It was written in both human languages and script. It spelled out the terms of the new relationship between Earth and the Dominion. There would be peace, real peace, not the peace of conquered and conqueror, but the peace of equals. Trade would begin. Knowledge would be shared. Borders would be respected. They had agreed to everything. They had not negotiated. They had not argued. They had simply accepted. This was because of the note. 2 weeks after the battle, the leaders of the Dominion had gathered in their most secure meeting room. It was buried deep beneath there, protected by shields and guards and technology that should have been impossible to penetrate. When they arrived, they found a piece of paper on the table. It was human paper, simple wood fiber pressed flat. On it was a message written in perfect calligraphy. We know where yours is. We knew before you arrived. We have known for 53 years. We chose not to strike first because we hoped you would change your minds. Please do not make us reconsider our mercy. There was no signature. There was no threat. There was just the simple fact that humans had reached into the most protected place in the Empire and left a message. The Dominion leaders had looked at each other. They had understood. Now, 6 months later, they signed the accords. Doctor watched the ceremony from a private viewing room above the Great Hall. She was tired, more tired than she had ever been. The battle had been the easy part. The months of negotiations, the planning for a new future, the constant work of building a peace that would last. These things had drained her more than decades of secret preparation ever had. Colonel sat beside her. He was in a wheelchair now. His body was finally giving out after 80 years of service. But his eyes were still sharp. His mind was still clear. "We did it," he said quietly. "We actually did it." Nodded, she watched the representatives press their claws to the document, leaving their marks. She watched the human delegates sign their names. "We survived," she agreed. "That was always the goal, just survive." Smiled, it was a rare thing. He had not smiled much in the decades she had known him. Do you think they understand? He asked. Do you think they truly understand what they encountered? Thought about this for a long time. She thought about all the years of planning, all the secrets, all the sacrifices. She thought about the people who had given their lives to this cause and would never see this day. I think they are beginning to, she said. They studied us for 800 years and saw violence. They thought we were destroying ourselves. They did not understand that we were teaching ourselves, learning, getting better at the one thing we do better than anyone else. Surviving, said. Surviving, agreed. No matter what, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how hopeless it seems, we find a way. We always find a way. Below them, the ceremony was ending. The representatives were standing. Hands and claws were being shaken. A new era was beginning. Word of what happened at Earth had spread across the galaxy. Other species, some conquered by some living in fear of them, had heard the story. A primitive species on a small blue world had destroyed the greatest invasion fleet in Dominion history. In seconds. Already messages were arriving at Earth. Requests for contact, offers of alliance, questions about how it had been done. The galaxy was watching humanity now, really watching. Not like they had watched looking for weakness. They were watching with curiosity, with hope, with something that might have been admiration. Stood up slowly. Her bones ached. She was 70 years old. She had given her entire life to this cause, and now it was done. What happens next? Asked. Looked out at the stars. So many stars, so many worlds, so many possibilities. Now we join the galaxy, she said. Not as victims, not as conquerors, as survivors, as equals, as humans. She helped to his feet. They walked together toward the door. The thought they were the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, she said. They conquered thousands of worlds. They believed they were unstoppable. Then they came to Earth and learned something important. What was that? Smiled. It was a warm smile, a human smile. They learned that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not the species that conquers. It is the species that refuses to be conquered. The species that fights back. The species that looks at impossible odds and says, "Try me." They reached the door. Beyond it, the future waited. A future among the stars. A future that humanity had earned in blood and sacrifice and 11 seconds of perfect destruction. We are not the biggest, said. We are not the oldest, we are not even but we are here, we survived, and now everyone knows what that means. She opened the door. It means that whatever comes next, whatever challenges the galaxy throws at us, we will face them the same way we faced together, determined, ready. Colonel laughed. It was a sound full of joy and relief and pride. Humanity, he said, we really are something, are we not? Looked back one more time at the ceremony below, at the humans and aliens making peace, at the Earth hanging in the sky, at the future being born. Yes, she said, we really are. The door closed behind them. And in the great hall below, humanity took its first steps into a new dawn.